even for me and even for people I was living with here, we were affected by that shutdown in that first 2 week period. COVID hysteria has put us, I say us, like humanity, in a very strained psychological state. And let's just go back to the beginning of this whole thing. New virus. We don't know how dangerous it is. We don't know how contagious it is. We don't know how deadly it is. We don't know where it came from, except sort of maybe China, Wuhan. You know, I'm not going back to when it was a twinkle in a bat's eye. If you believe that origin story, and god damn, has that been a dumb distraction? Was it made in a lab? Was it natural? Was it a Chinese wet market? Can we insert some racism into this conversation about COVID? Oh yes, plenty. But why is it that a virus raises racial issues of racism? Oh, because it's part of divide and conquer. Because what happened? How did this become a thing? Well, this virus itself. Again, got to remind everybody, when we first looked at the virus, got a handle on how deadly it was, they couldn't convince us to shut down, to lock down, to do anything, because it wasn't that deadly, and they knew that it wasn't. But somehow they convinced us. But you know what? We can't let it overwhelm hospitals. So 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and in that 2 weeks, the fear was implanted. The fear became of some other unknown, not of the virus of COVID-19, Corona, that we didn't remember. It used to be Corona. We remember the good old days when we called it Corona. The Rona. You got a touch of the Rona, huh? Bit of the Rona. Yeah, you might want to go get some rest and drink some fluids if you got a little Rona. And now it's COVID-19. They switched. It got deeper. They embedded the fear at a much deeper psychological level than I thought was possible. And I fell for it. I fell for it. I thought we might have got it because we were touring on the road with the bus, shaking a lot of hands. Pretty sure we got exposed, but even then I didn't take the threat seriously. And somehow people, you know what, and I almost don't want to argue this point, right? Because we know that it has a 99.9% survivability rate overall. I mean, it's a virus that is less deadly than being a former employee of the Clintons, right? To tell you, yeah, I knew Ed was going to laugh for that one. A virus less deadly than trusting government. I mean, we could tell endless dumb jokes about COVID, but there's a 99.9% they won't be funny anyway because my comedy's not that good, and I'm doing this rant off the top of my head. But yeah, just really the idea that this became the threat. Oh, you're going to kill grandma. Well, they convinced us that we needed a lockdown for 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And you know what happened in that 2 weeks? A lot of people were hurting from that shutdown. From a lot of people were scared, very, very scared of the economic prospects. Not so much the virus itself, because the virus is like, oh, well, it's unknown, but it doesn't look that bad. We can isolate, and get. But oh fuck, I just lost my job. They took our jobs. The COVID, it took our jobs. Yeah, no. And that put a lot of people, like even people who were relatively well off, right? Yeah, and in that sense, I mean, financially, I'm a poor broke motherfucker, but I am a rich man by all of the metrics that I care about. And I have land, and I have my health, and I have wonderful relationships, and they're getting better actually as I start some of the thinking that I'm applying recently about this. And this is what we're going to get into tonight, about the toxic mentality of COVID hysteria. So during that 2 weeks, even people who were well off, right? And this is like, in this sense, I count myself. I have land and property and practical shit and a little bit of passive income, enough to, my VA disability. As long as the government is working, I'll be okay. Right? Yeah. But even for me, and even for people I was living with here, we were affected by that shutdown in that first 2 week period. And it introduced a lot of, I consider myself extremely mentally healthy, not perfect, but very self-aware, very aware, very conscious of mental health in general, of my mood and attitude, and resilient. And even for me, there was an experience of anxiety and uncertainty, more because of other people's hysteria, right, than my own. I mean, if anything, I felt like the part of the calm in the middle of the storm while everybody else is freaking out. And in that state of anxiety, in that state of distress, in that lowered state of mental health and resiliency, that fear set in. And it became an excuse for everything. And I pointed this out before, right? That if you wanted to stay home, like Eric Cartman, walk around with a 6-foot-long stick, stay away, poking people. You could do that. If you wanted to be a Karen, if you wanted to bully your neighbors, if you wanted to be a little more self-righteous, if you wanted an excuse for a daily holier than thou ritual of telling other people to distance and wear their masks and now get the vaccine, then you could. If you wanted to print a few $1 trillion on behalf of the banking class, you could. And of course, who are the ones pushing the fear narrative? The mainstream media and the government. And who's benefiting? The rich get richer while everybody else suffers. And the economic metrics, I mean, people can argue with me on this. Oh, look at them, but jobs. But 86.57309% of all statistics are total made up bullshit designed to manipulate you. So, like, really, let's look around and use a little common sense, because never before, at least in my lifetime, has it seemed like there has been such a disconnect from reality and the mainstream narrative. Lies, 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 and statistics, all designed to manipulate, to keep you in a state of fear. And I assume if you're listening to me at this point, certainly if you're listening live, you've gotten past this fear. At least you've been able to reason your way out of it, to put COVID in perspective. And for the people who are still playing this game of COVID make-believe, like, really, you haven't yet realized that this is at very best. Like, at the nicest I could possibly be to the COVIDists and to those indulging in COVID hysteria is to say that it is a misplaced priority, misplaced fear. And you say, well, it's killing people. Even if you believe their statistics where they lie and they say, well, if you died with it, then you died from it. And the biggest lie of this whole thing. And the people who want to believe that, because this is where I want to get deep tonight. I really want to examine this. Because it's fear. It's an indulgence in fear. It's a fear that becomes the excuse for everything else, right? But I think the greatest side effect of the vaccine has finally reared its ugly head, because we can talk about blood clots and this and that, and I gotta say again, it's fucking maddening how much we don't know that we know we should, that we know we're fucking capable of knowing, that the elites, to use a generalized term, they know they don't care about the virus. They go out unmasked. Fucking AOC in her tax the rich dress while not wearing a mask, surrounded by masked help at the Met Gala. The royal family of England hosting a birthday banquet where the staff is required to be masked and they are unmasked. I know the people who know what's going on don't buy it. And the rich get richer at everybody else's expense. So the story goes. And now with the vaccine, we should know. We should fucking know by now. How dangerous is it? And honestly, we don't. Because we know that a big chunk of what we know are the undeniable vaccine victim horror stories are being censored and suppressed. Let alone because most of them are cases where you don't know. You can't say for sure until you do the broader statistical analysis. You know, we're going to get personal tonight about this too, because this is an issue with my family. I was recently uninvited from my stepdad's memorial ceremony, life celebration. I don't know if calling it a funeral is appropriate. I won't presume for my mom or my stepdad, but because I won't get tested, because I visited them before while he was alive to help, didn't have to get tested for that. She's singling me out for tests because other people who are going to be there don't want to be around someone who's untested. Dude, I could break down the irrationality of that position. I mean, might take me out. Should I try? Should I do a brief breakdown of that? Like that. First of all, the very premise of like, well, if you're afraid of a virus, get vaccinated, wear a mask, distance, stay home, protect yourself. This whole thing, this premise, it's been turned on its head now. Of you have to be afraid of other people, and it's okay to demand that other people adjust their lives to mitigate your risk is absolutely fucking absurd. But the idea again that I'm going to get tested, first of all, as if the tests were reliable in the first place. No, but it's an excuse to exclude somebody. Well, we have to test you because if we get a positive, whether it's true or not, we get to exclude you, right? But the idea that I have to get tested, and my mom said this. I'm going to call my mom out on this. My mom said, "Hey, this is a reasonable standard. If you're not vaccinated, you have to get tested." Do I really have to explain why that is so unreasonable, or just out of touch with the reality that now we know that even if you're vaccinated, first of all, it's gone in 6 months in terms of effectiveness, if you believe that it was effective to begin with. And you can still, even if you just got your shots and you are freshly vaccinated, you can still catch and transmit COVID. But no, me, the one who's unvaccinated, who actually, and the other maddening thing about this is that it's unhealthy people trying to give health advice to healthy people and not listening to authorities based on white lab coats and fancy titles and government positions. Not, oh, well, this is a healthy person who's an authority because they've proven it. You know, someone like Mike Adams, like the health ranger, who I will criticize every time I mention his name to say that he is sensationalistic because I can't give him absolute unreserved endorsement. But I do endorse the fact that he has gotten a lot of people healthier by questioning authority and by telling the truth. And he knows his shit. My criticism of him is more stylistic to prepare people. Because if I send you to Mike Adams and you go, this is sensationalistic. Oh, yeah, well, fuck it. Because he should be. Because somebody needs to be. And goddamn is Mike Adams a healthy motherfucker. Top to bottom. And does he know his shit? But he doesn't know how dangerous the vaccines are. Because he doesn't have access to that data. Because no one does. Because that data is being obfuscated deliberately. You know, again, who benefits? The rich get richer at the expense of everybody else. And so Ed said something to me this morning that I will say, and I'm not going to get any more personal, I don't think, than I just did. I don't want to put my family on blast any more than that for their COVIDiacy. But I do want to learn from this because what Ed said this morning raised a really important issue. Do you mind if I share this briefly and to integrate in this? Ed, because I can't even remember how it came up, but we were talking about all these related issues, and Ed said, you know, well, I'm protecting my own here. And he said he's had to give up on a lot of relationships with people who didn't want to see the truth, people who didn't care about their health, people who were closed-minded, right? People who we have to say at some point, like, we're going to leave you behind in Babylon. I will pull you fucking hard, but when you start kicking and screaming, I want to stay in Babylon, I got to leave you in Babylon because you're starting to suck me in. Like you might die, and Ed said, "I will shed a tear when I." And I'm inserting some language. Am I misrepresenting the gist of it? Okay.
No, you're right.
But I'm extrapolating even to share my sentiment. So I'm on Ed's sentiment of, if you want to scream and kick to stay in Babylon, I will not drag you out, because at some point you're pulling me in and making my life as shitty as yours, and I'm happy out here. Holy shit! Every day. It is a blessing to wake up in Gardenia, to be on my own homestead. And you know what, Ed? I share that sentiment to a certain degree, but I'm not that, and I share, I think, your sort of strategic lifestyle conclusion, you know? And Ed said, you said today, you don't want to be around vax people, because we don't know how. Like, first of all, we know that, at very least, we know that vax people are dumb and dangerously compliant in the way that I was when I enlisted in the Marine Corps and volunteered to murder strangers on the other side of the planet. Yeah, it's that's what fucking happens when you trust authority that shouldn't be trusted, right? But they are to the point of being dangerously dumb and trusting and obedient, where I don't want to be around that. And COVID has brought out this wave of fear, has brought out some ugliness in a lot of personalities, a lot of people showing their dark sides when they have this excuse to do whatever they want, or at least they have this excuse that they can invoke. Oh, and it's not you being an asshole, it's just COVID. Yeah, man, it's just COVID. You're just being a good person because you're spreading the COVIDism mythology. You're the good word of COVID, the good word of Saint Fauci, right?
I keep thinking of the Marine.
Yeah, right. That stubborn, that refusal, and you know what? Ernie Hancock, our mutual friend, once told me, and this resonates a lot sometimes. We just have to wait for some people to die. But I'm not ready to accept all of that. I believe, and I maybe tonight we got to examine this. Is this Adam's blind faith in humanity? Am I unnecessarily hopeful? Am I harmfully optimistic and thinking that no one is beyond redemption, that no one is beyond being reached, that everybody has some key to unlock their psychological barriers to seeing the truth, to opening their hearts and their minds to compassion and the reality that is in front of them, without a denial that has been induced by fear and the trauma that they were subjected to as children? No, none of them are beyond being reached. Now the question comes down to, where do we draw the line? How much effort are we willing to put in? But at very least tonight, I demand that we put in the effort to examine this critically and say, how do we reach such people? Can we understand this as a mechanism of fear? Because you know what? There is one side effect from the COVID vaccinations. All of them. There's one universal side effect that goes along with all of them that is now undeniably apparent. Inability to admit that you were fucking wrong. So how do you get people to admit that they were wrong? How do you get people to step out of that? How do you love them hard enough? How do you build them up enough? How do you encourage them once they have sunken so far into Babylon and are unwilling to see that and to pull themselves out of that? It's like they're too far gone. But I think no one is beyond redemption. The more we think about it, the more love we pour into these questions, the more people we might be able to reach, to save. And that's always my goal. I don't know about always. Sometimes I just want to fuck around and have fun. But this dark cloud of COVID is really putting a cramp in my style 2 years on. We're still dealing with this shit. God damn it. Take your COVID vitamins and live a better life. We're going to get deep tonight. Maybe we'll take some calls. Ed and Jim, we're going to get into all this. Ed is doing his job as ombudsman, already taking notes. So
Look at the whole page already.
we're probably just gonna jump straight into your notes, and we'll do a Homefront Battle Buddies update and whatnot. Well, let's get Jim up here. Let's get Ed up here. That's my opener. I'm happy with that as an opener. At least to set up the conversation for tonight. So let's bring Jim and Snoop Dogg into the conversation.
Snoop Dogg.
Snoop. Oh shit! They changed a bunch of shit. What's going on right now?
We will meet that challenge with courage and love, and as always, we the people will prevail!